Alright, welcome back. Alright, where we left off last time in The Amazing Spider-Man, Mary Jane turned down Peter's marriage proposal, and they are not quite on good terms. And Aunt May is still in the hospital. And then in Spectacular Spider-Man, the Masked Marauder has Spider-Man in his clutches. And we got a lot to do this time, so let's get to it. Okay, no time to waste. There's a lot this time, and I don't want this to be 45 minutes long. So, alright. Spider-Man is blinded by the Masked Marauder's eye beams. These eye beams. And is left for the police as the Marauder escapes. The police think Spider-Man robbed the bank, and he blindly runs away to hide. Because he's blind. Daredevil finds him to question him about the bank heist and finds out that Spider-Man's blind. And he's like, oh, I'm blind, but I can't tell you. And then also more pointless stuff with the White Tiger, Hector, the whole thing. I really don't know why they focus any scenes on his personal life that have no effect on Spider-Man or any of the other main characters in the story. I mean, if they want to have scenes about like Flash or MJ or Jameson or any of the other regular people in the comic that have been established as major characters, that's fine. The White Tiger stuff just seems like needless filler. The good thing, they don't do it too much towards the later end of the year. So, all right, in the next issue. An interesting note is that for these next two issues, 27 and 28, Frank Miller is a guest artist. He's like the drawer. He actually penciled the whole thing. And yes, it's the same Frank Miller who did all those amazing Batman and Daredevil stories and who created the classic Sin City and 300 graphic novels. And yeah. So anyway, Daredevil takes Spider-Man to a doctor, and the doctor says that his sight may return, obviously. And then Spider-Man and Daredevil, both blind, search for the Masked Marauder, and they find him. And the Marauder's master plan is to detonate a nuclear bomb in New York City unless the mayor turns the city over to him. It sounds like something out of 24, and I'm fine with that. Marauder's android thing that he has morphs into its bomb bird form and flies out the window. And yeah, I'm going to say the art is really great in this issue. Like, really good. And I really don't expect any less from Frank Miller. And, same thing with the next issue and even the next few issues. Art's really, really good. Anyway, issue 28. Spider-Man stops the bomb, and Daredevil defeats the Marauder. And yeah, Spider-Man's sight starts coming back, and then Peter returns to his apartment to find that his friends have gathered because he hasn't been seen for days, and now his apartment has been wrecked by somebody. He goes to the school library to meet Hector and finds Carrion, who I mentioned in the last review. He's there waiting for him, and Carrion apparently knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker and claims that Peter murdered somebody. And then in the next issue, Peter fights Carrion for a bit, but Carrion leaves and saves the fight for another time because of his master plan that he has. And then Carrion continues to follow him and keeps telling Peter things that he knows about him, about oh, he's failing gym, or he didn't take that gym credit, or all that stuff. And then and he's like, oh, you just snagged that costume from the alley. And he's like, what? And then just Carrion seems to know everything about Peter and know his every move. And then they have a confrontation in the gym at ESU, and Peter is in his Spider-Man duds, and Carrion accuses him of murdering Gwen Stacy and Professor Warren. aka the Jackal. And then in the next issue, number 30, Spider-Man and Carrion fight some more, and Carrion drugs him with some kind of dust and takes him to Professor Warren's lab, where he straps him to a table and prepares for the final stage of his revenge. He reveals that he is the living clone of Professor Warren. And then in the next issue, Carrion tells how he came to be. And before Warren left for his final confrontation with Spider-Man as the Jackal, he started a clone of himself in the clone casket that he had in his lab. And when the clone was finished, he was unable to get out of the casket. And then the cloning process just continued until the clone reached old age and died. But the fluid kept it alive. And then a student opened the casket, and the horrifying being inside the casket emerged, and he discovered that his horrific nature repelled every living thing, and he could use his power to teleport and become intangible so that bullets just pass through him, and he could even read thoughts. So Carrion's plan to kill Spider-Man is by cloning an ancient ancestor and mixing in the blood of Spider-Man so it has spider powers. And Spider-Man escapes, and this amoebic spider creature devours Carrion, which is just the next closest being to Spider-Man. And then the lab burns down. And I must say, this was definitely one of my favorite stories in a long time, and Carrion was definitely one of, if not the most dangerous opponent to date for Spider-Man. Also, he was the most terrifying by far. This is almost like a return of the Jackal, because it was the same guy. He's just, he didn't have the Jackal suit on. He just had this terrifying look. And it seems like the Jackal, in any form that he takes, makes for an extremely deadly opponent for Spider-Man. And he's not used much. It makes me sad. Alright, let's go over to Amazing Spider-Man, number 188. A gang steals John Jameson's body from the hospital. He was cryogenically frozen until they could find a way to cure his werewolfism. And, so then Peter and friends go on a cruise ship, and Jigsaw hops aboard with others to try and steal something without running into Spider-Man. Bad luck, I'd say. Spider-Man shows up, obviously, and freaks the crap out of him, and Jigsaw just can't shoot Spider-Man in the face while looking directly at him. So there's just something about those eyes. And then the next issue, Aunt May is moved to a nursing home. Jameson puts out a reward for his missing son. Jameson gets attacked by a mummy under orders, and Spider-Man steps in and fights the mummy. Mummy turns out to be the wolf version of John Jameson, J. Jonah Jameson's son, if you don't know, the astronaut, turns into a werewolf. Anyway, next issue. The John Jameson werewolf steals away with J. Jonah under orders of Spencer Smythe, the creator of the Spider Slayers from all those times before. And he's dying of radiation poisoning and wants revenge against Spider-Man and Jameson for making him expose himself to this radiation for years to build these Spider Slayers. And the wolf takes Jameson to the top of the Brooklyn Bridge, but turns back into a man when Spider-Man gets there. Smythe activates Plan B and detonates something in John's body that causes him to fall off the bridge and then dissipate. Just kind of. And yeah, the next issue. Jameson accuses Spider-Man of murder in his paper, and everybody in the city hates him. Spider-Man, angrier than ever, goes after Jameson only to be caught by a Spider Slayer. After being knocked unconscious, Smythe takes him back to his lab, where he shackles Spider-Man and Jameson together with a bomb that's set to go off in 24 hours. And then in the next issue, 192, with the bomb shackled between the wrists of Jameson and Spider-Man, they traipse all over town trying to figure out how to stop it. Spider-Man leaping around on the buildings, and Jameson's just complaining the whole time. And they head back to Smythe's lab, where they find him dead, and Spider-Man manages to unshackle it from the wrists and throw it out the window before it explodes, thus saving both of their lives. Jameson still hates Spider-Man. Issue 193. The Fly robs a museum exhibit and escapes from Spider-Man. Everything starts going wrong for Peter. He's fired. Joe Robertson is angry with him. Mary Jane is done with him because he couldn't show up for their last chance date. Betty's husband returns to New York and takes her away from him too. Everybody blames Spider-Man for any crime he's in the vicinity of, and he's angrier and more frustrated than he's ever been. All he wants to do is beat the living daylights out of somebody and just pound his frustration out. So he looks for the Fly because he's the only one who can take Spider-Man's full strength at the time. He finds that the police already apprehended the Fly when he gets there. So that's disappointing, you know? Really wants to beat him up. The guy renting Aunt May's old house is looking for something in the walls and under the floorboards, but he doesn't find it. Turns out to be the guy who killed Uncle Ben, and he shows up at the nursing home to kill Aunt May. And then in issue 194, the issue marks the first introduction of the Black Cat, possibly the most dangerous villain for Spidey. She can seduce him fairly easily because she's a voluptuous woman, and in turn distract him from the dangers around him. And so the Black Cat runs around town getting men together to perform the heist of a prison inmate. And Spider-Man follows her around and fails to stop her before she and her cohorts get the inmate out. In their first encounter, Black Cat kisses Spider-Man and leaves him befuddled while she runs away. And in their second encounter, she blows him a kiss before the wall he's on blows up, leaving him under a pile of rubble. Also, Peter now has a job as head photographer at the Daily Globe, the main competitor for the Daily Bugle. Jameson fired Peter, and now his pictures are selling the Daily Globe like hotcakes. And in the next issue, 195, Spider-Man gets a broken arm from the rubble that landed on him, and then Peter tries to act like a jerk to Betty to get her to go back to Ned, but it just doesn't work as well as he planned. Ned is upset at him for completely devastating her, and Flash and Harry think less and less of him because he acted like a jerk to them earlier as well, for no reason really. And then Spider-Man then goes after the Black Cat, and she accidentally falls from a cliff into the water below, seemingly dying, but probably not. When he goes home, he finds a telegram saying that Aunt May has died, but it's probably just a plot to keep him away from the nursing home while Uncle Ben's killer finds out from Aunt May where whatever it is he's looking for is. Then in issue 196, Peter grieves over the death of Aunt May, and Joe Robertson quits the Daily Bugle because of Jonah's obsession with Spider-Man and defaming him. The guys who helped the Black Cat with her prison heist capture Spider-Man and bring him to the Kingpin. And then in the next issue, Kingpin says that his wife has given him an ultimatum: either continue his life of crime or give up crime altogether for a life with her. And the Kingpin's last criminal act in the 24 hours he has to make the decision is to kill Spider-Man. And they battle for the whole issue, which is like 6 hours worth of time, and at the end, Kingpin has Spider-Man in a vulnerable position, ready to kill him. I mean, he could literally just pull the trigger and Spider-Man would be done. But his wife walks in and says, "Time's up. Either Spider-Man's life or her." And he decides not to pull the trigger and leaves with her. It's his main weakness, his wife. And in issue 198, Spider-Man runs off to the nursing home after realizing the guy running the place is, in fact, Mysterio. When he gets there, he runs into lots and lots of illusions before Mysterio knocks him out and chains him to the bottom of a swimming pool and fills it with water. The next issue, 199, Spider-Man uses his webbing to pull the plug of the swimming pool, making it drain. At first I was like, oh, that's neat how his webbing can impossibly work underwater. But then he realizes that there was never water in there at all, and I was like, okay. It was just another illusion. He breaks free, gets some rest at home, and then goes after Mysterio the next day. Mysterio's looking for something very valuable at Aunt May's house, the same thing that Uncle Ben's killer was looking for. And Spider-Man shows up, and there are more crazy illusions, and then Mysterio goes back to the nursing home. Spider-Man follows him, and then Mysterio shoots him with a very powerful tranquilizer dart. And I must say that Mysterio is just so awesome. Every issue he's in so far has been one of the best. And I really cannot wait to see a movie where he is the main villain, because it would be something to behold. Alright, let's go back to Spectacular Spider-Man, because that was the last issue of the year for Amazing Spider-Man. Number 32. Number 32. Peter gets a job as an assistant teacher to actually Dr. Connors. And Connors has somehow inadvertently made an iguana able to grow human size like the lizard, because he transferred some of his life force or whatever to the lizard using the same thing that he used with Spider-Man back during the whole Kingpin thing a little while ago. And anyway, at the zoo where the class is held, it's like a field trip or something, Peter changes into Spider-Man and then fights the iguana. And then in the next issue, the iguana has all the powers of Lizard and the memories of Connors. And Iguana goes to Connors' house to use his family as insurance that Connors will not try to destroy him. And Connors purposefully changes into the Lizard to go fight Iguana. And Spider-Man's already at the penthouse fighting the iguana when Connors shows up. Then in the next issue, number 34, the Lizard and Iguana fall off the roof and end up in the sewer. And unable to follow, for some reason, Spider-Man goes to Connors' lab and makes a portable version of the device that Connors was working on, called the Enervator. And then he catches up with the reptiles and uses the device to transfer the Lizard's life force into the iguana. And the iguana can't handle it all and explodes. And Spider-Man says Connors shouldn't turn into the Lizard anymore because he's just transferred all of the life force over. So, but I doubt that'll happen, but it's a nice thought. Number 35, the Mindworm comes back. He was way back when Flash came back home. But yeah, now, after their last battle, he was taken to the hospital. And the Mindworm, in case you don't know, has extreme telepathic abilities. And somehow he and Spider-Man share a dream. Well, it's a nightmare. But Spider-Man helps the Mindworm overcome his feelings of alienation, and Mindworm learns the Spider-Man mantra, with great power comes great responsibility. And Spider-Man and Mindworm part ways on pretty good terms. Number 36. The issue starts with a really cool scene of Spider-Man capturing some escaping bank robbers for the police. And like he peels back the roof of a car and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. And the issue itself, after that, is about the awakening of a villain called Swarm, who is a swarm of bees that take the form of a man around the skeleton of a Nazi who once controlled them. And also, they collectively embody his consciousness. And yeah. Then, number 37. the teacher's assistants at the school where the swarm is attacking create a super insect repellent, and Spider-Man coats his suit in it and mixes it with his webbing and goes into the giant hive on the campus and wrecks Swarm and the Queen Bee and just destroys them. Yeah. And I'm actually going to talk about the annual this time, because they did something kind of neat. It was like a two-parter that was over both the Amazing Annual and the Spectacular Annual. And this is also the first time that there's a Spectacular Annual. In the Amazing Annual, some agent gets murdered, thrown out of a window, and cops think it's suicide. Spider-Man investigates to prove that it's a homicide, and Dr. Octopus is also looking for the murderer, but for very different reasons. And the guy helping Spider-Man, who also knows that he's Peter Parker, turns out to probably be the ghost of the agent who was murdered. And during a fight with Doc Ock, Spider-Man rips one of his mechanical arms off, and it's pretty sweet. And at the end of this issue, they have another villain gallery. They've had a few of these. And it's a gallery of Spider-Man's most famous foes. Most famous. Some of the ones included the Looter. Have you heard of him? No, of course not. Because he's not that great. Another one, the Kangaroo. Some of the ones not included, the Green Goblin. Yeah, I guess he's not quite as famous as Kangaroo or the Looter. There's also Sandman, Mysterio, Vulture, Electro, Dr. Octopus. Well, to be fair, he was featured in the actual issue, so I guess they felt that it was okay to not include him in the most famous foes part. There's also Chameleon, Kraven, Scorpion, the Lizard, Morbius. All these not included in the most famous foes gallery. And guess who else? The Jackal. Nowhere to be seen. And you know what? That is it. I am making a movie with the Jackal as the villain, and it's going to be the best Spider-Man anything that has ever existed. I'm getting pretty sick of this malarkey. Alright, let's move on to the Spectacular Spider-Man Annual. Doc Ock steals an atomic sub. Remember, this is a continuation of the last one. And Spider-Man rips the hatch off of the submarine, and water floods in and sinks it, and Doc Ock seemingly goes down with the ship and dies, but he probably survives somehow, I'm guessing. Yeah. So, pretty good year, I would say. Definitely one of the best years in a little while. I really liked a lot of the issues. Yeah, most of them got 4 or 5 stars, maybe 1 or 2 3s. Yeah, so it's getting better. Getting better again. That's good. Very good. Yeah. So, I will see you next time with the following issues.